Hello, everyone. We have Kathleen Zellners Reply. So welcome to another special edition of the Open Mic. We're going to do a reading here. This one's quite a bit longer than her original filing. So it looks like it's about 63 or 53 pages, I think it says. So I'm going to read through it, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. So here we go. Get it pulled up here so everybody can see. Okay. I'm going to read through it, and we'll have a discussion. All right, here we go. State of Wisconsin Court of Appeals, District 2. Defendant appellate's reply to the state's response to motion to stay, appeal, and remand. The defendant appellate, Stephen Avery, Mr. Avery, by his undersigned attorneys, Kathleen Zellner and Stephen G. Richards, for his reply to the state's response in opposition to his motion to stay the appeal and remand the cause to the circuit court, states as follows. Introduction. It is a supreme irony that in one of the most blatant examples of wrongful conviction, the state's only response is to falsely accuse Mr. Avery's lead counsel of nefarious conduct for discovering the sixth Brady violation. Rather than seeking justice, the state wants to slay the messenger by putting forth more false allegations, a skill that it has mastered over the last 16 years. The state turns a blind eye towards its past actions of withholding exculpatory evidence. When the state disclosed a CD of a violent porn from Dassey Yonda computer 12 years after the CD was created and concealed from prior counsel, the state argued, as it does now, that Mr. Avery was attempting to add new material to his 974.06 motion. When the state facilitated the destruction of, in 2011, of evidence it had agreed to allow Mr. Avery to test, the state argued, as it does now, that Mr. Avery was attempting to add new material to his 974.06 motion. This court did not accept those disingenuous responses then, and it should reject the same disingenuous response now. The state asked this court to overlook the fact that in further violation of discovery, it failed to disclose to Mr. Avery's prior counsel that a former driver who had delivered newspapers to the Avery salvage yard in November of 2005 observed two men, including a shirtless Bobby Dassey, the state's primary witness in securing Mr. Avery's conviction, pushing Ms. Hawbock's RAV4 down Avery Road prior to its later discovery on the Avery property. In its response, the state states, it reasonably to conclude at this point that Mr. Avery is not pursuing these claims in good faith. However, the state's conclusion is clearly refuted by the procedural history of the case, the veracity of Ms. Sowinski's statements, the supporting affidavits, and the state's history of misconduct. While the state has not been prejudiced in any way by its own misconduct, and this court's prior rulings granting Mr. Avery's motions to remand, its response merely mimics in its previous responses to Mr. Avery's motions, arguing that Mr. Avery is dragging this appeal out and that he should voluntarily dismiss his pending appeal. It is the state's pattern of concealing and withholding exculpatory evidence that has forced Mr. Avery to delay his appeal numerous times already, delaying his request for a new trial and eventual freedom. Argument number 1. The state's argument that Avery did not conduct a reasonable investigation before filing his motion is completely meritless. The state argues that Avery's counsel violated Wisconsin Statute 902.05 by not conducting any affirmative investigation into the assertions made by Mr. Sowinski in his affidavit before filing the motion for remand. Without citing any precedent or acknowledging Mr. Avery's prior discovery request, the state suggests that Avery was required to attempt a new open records request to verify Mr. Sowinski's call and or ascertain the identity of the female officer with whom Mr. Sowinski spoke prior to filing the motion. The state maintains that Avery's counsel may not rely simply on the word of a person like Sowinski before presenting Ms. Sowinski's affidavit to the court. The state's argument should be rejected because it is based on false premise, i.e. that Mr. Avery's attorney did not conduct a reasonable investigation into Mr. Sowinski and the averments in his affidavit before filing the motion for remand. The state's argument appears to be based on a self-serving conclusion that Mr. Avery's counsel stumbled upon Mr. Sowinski and within 24 hours filed a pending motion to stay the appeal and remand for Mr. Avery to file a supplemental post-conviction motion with circuit court. The state's conclusion is demonstrably false and result of a careless, sloppy reading of Mr. Avery's motion. The simple truth is that Mr. Avery's counsel conducted a thorough investigation relative to Mr. Sowinski. Certainly, a great deal more effort was made to vet Mr. Sowinski than the state made to vet its primary witness, Bobby, who has been caught in numerous untruths. During Mr. Avery's trial, Bobby testified that he was asleep and woke up around 2:30 p.m. and looked out of the kitchen window of Dassey yonder residence and saw that Ms. Halbach's RAV4 pull up. Ms. Sowinski exits the vehicle and start taking pictures of Dassey yonder van. When Ms. Halbach finished photographing the van, Bobby claimed to see her walking towards Uncle Steve's trailer. Bobby testified that he took a shower, and when he left the property at about 2:45 p.m. to go bow hunting, he claimed that Ms. Halbach's RAV4 was still on the property, but he did not see her. Bobby's testimony was the only evidence presented by the state that the RAV4 never left the property after October 31st, 2005. Bobby's testimony was the most determinative of Mr. Avery's guilt because the state used it to establish that Ms. Halbach never left the Avery property. Based upon Bobby's testimony, the state claimed that Mr. Avery was the last person to see Ms. Halbach alive. However, Bobby's testimony is replete with lies and contradicted by numerous witnesses, including his own brother, Brian, who told law enforcement that Bobby saw Ms. Halbach leave the Avery property on October 31st, 2005. The CD, which the state withheld from Mr. Avery's counsel, also establishes a timeline of internet searches directly contradicting Bobby's trial testimony that on October 31st, he was asleep from 6:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Additionally, Bobby's testimony that his back was scratched by his puppy has been refuted by Mr. Avery's experts, Larry Blum, MD. Unlike the state's failures to investigate the credibility of its primary witness, Bobby, Mr. Avery's counsel rigorously investigated Mr. Sowinski's claims. Mr. Sowinski first emailed Mr. Avery's counsel law firm on December 26, 2020, and Mr. Avery's counsel and her investigator vetted the legitimacy and veracity of the information provided by Mr. Sowinski over the next 3.5 months before filing the pending motion to stay. Prior to filing the motion, Mr. Avery's counsel, 1, reviewed Mr. Sowinski's email sent on December 26, 2020, Zellner Affidavit. 2, conducted an extensive background check producing, among other information, Mr. Sowinski's previous address, phone numbers, job history, social media, accounts, car purchases, criminal history, relatives, etc. Zellner Affidavit. Reviewed all the discovery produced by the state prior to Mr. Avery's 2007 trial, searching for any record of Mr. Sowinski's phone call to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office. Again, Zellner's Affidavit. 4, searched and corroborated Mr. Sowinski's statement based on other evidence, including but not limited to affidavits of Blaine Dassey and Kevin Ramlow. 5, hired an additional licensed investigator, James R. Kirby, to conduct an additional background check of Mr. Sowinski through additional databases. Number 6, after confirming the veracity of Mr. Sowinski by its extensive investigation, Mr. Avery's counsel and staff conducted a telephone interview with Mr. Sowinski on April 9, 2021, related to what he claimed to witness. Number 7, after this interview, Mr. Avery's counsel and staff prepared an affidavit and requested Investigator Kirby meet with Mr. Sowinski in person and conduct a second interview of him to determine his credibility. After thoroughly interviewing Mr. Sowinski and reviewing his affidavit with him for any changes, Mr. Sowinski executed his affidavit on April 10, 2021. See affidavits of Kathleen Zellner and Investigator James R. Kirby attached as Group Exhibit A. Based on the foregoing, the notion that Mr. Avery's counsel did not reasonably investigate Mr. Sowinski and the information he has provided is simply untrue. Undersigned counsel and her investigator have had the opportunity to assess Mr. Sowinski's credibility based on his demeanor and the consistency between his observations and other known facts related to the disappearance of Teresa Halbach. Undersigned counsel's investigation into Mr. Sowinski and his affidavit have continued since the filing of the motion to remand, the results of which to date have only confirmed the credibility of the information he has provided. The state's reasonable investigation argument, which reasonably can be construed as an attempt to unreasonably divert this court's attention from the materiality of the information provided by Mr. Sowinski, is based on a misleading characterization of Wisconsin Statute 802.05. The state's response suggests that an attorney must detail the steps that Mr. Avery's counsel took to verify the truthfulness of the assertions made in a pleading and the pleading itself. Wisconsin Statute 802.06 imposes no such obligation. On the contrary, requiring an attorney to discuss such information would infringe upon the work product privilege. Most materials, information, mental impressions, and strategies collected and adopted by a lawyer after a retainer in preparation of litigation and relevant to the possible issues must be initially classified as work product of the lawyer, not subject to the inspection or discovery unless good cause for discovery is shown. The state's argument that Mr. Avery's counsel did not reasonably investigate Mr. Sowinski and the statements in his affidavit because a new open records request was not made is not only unsupported by the precedent, but is illogical. Based on the information in Mr. Sowinski's affidavit, the state was constitutionally required to disclose Mr. Sowinski's phone call and the information he provided to law enforcement to the defense before Mr. Avery's trial. Undersigned counsel has previewed all the discovery disclosed by the prosecution, including records of phone calls made to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, and nowhere in the discovery does such a record exist of Mr. Sowinski's phone calls. The state provides no explanation as to why a record of Mr. Sowinski's call would be produced in response to an open records request now if the call was withheld in the first instance. Indeed, the non-disclosure or concealment of exculpatory information is the crux of a Brady violation. The state seemed unaware that the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department disclosed in 2018 that it no longer had the telephone call from citizens to its non-emergency number. See Group A, Zellner Affidavit 6, EX2. Lastly, the state's efforts to compare this situation to Balish is a complete non-starter. And Balish, the plaintiff, alleged that the defendant, whom she hired to replace a window in her home, stole $60,000 in cash from her office. Balish 224, Wisconsin 2D at 422 and 23. However, the homeowner was present when the defendant removed the window from her home and admitted that she did not observe any unusual bulge in the defendant's clothing to suggest that he secreted away such a large amount of cash. It was also undisputed that although the plaintiff discovered the money missing 3 days after the window was replaced, she did not report the cash missing to either her husband or the sheriff for another month. The sheriff's office investigated, and the complaint and closed the investigation without referring to the defendant for criminal prosecution. The circuit court granted a summary judgment in favor of the defendant and further found that the lawsuit was frivolous, awarding attorney's fees and costs to the defendant. In affirming the circuit court's award of such sanctions under Wisconsin Statute 802.05, this court noted that the plaintiff's attorney did not conduct any pre-filing investigation or post-filing discovery to confirm his client's allegations. This court also observed that a number of circumstances about the plaintiff's allegations, including the unlikelihood that she would leave so much money unattended in the presence of a stranger, the improbability of the defendant being able to walk out of the residence with $3,020 bills on his person, and the plaintiff's delay in reporting the cash as missing, did not pass the smell test, which should have triggered additional investigation by her attorney. This court held that, given those warning bells, the plaintiff's attorney failure to conduct any investigation beyond taking his own client's word for what occurred violated 802.05. It is readily apparent while Balish is inapplicable. Unlike the plaintiff and Balish, the set forth in the herein undersigned counsel has conducted a thorough investigation of the allegations in the motion for remand. Moreover, undersigned counsel is not relying on her client's rendition of events to support the allegations in the motion. Instead, she is relying on its assertions of an independent third party who has no stake in this litigation. Most importantly, unlike Balish, the state has not identified any undisputed evidence that sounds warning bells, calling into question the veracity of Mr. Sowinski's averments. In short, Balish has no bearing on any issue presented in Mr. Avery's motion for remand. Likewise, it is readily apparent that the state has not shown the motion for remand to be based on frivolous allegations and or that the motion was filed in violation of 802.05. 2. Because the state disputed Mr. Thomas Sowinski's credibility, this cause must be remanded. In its response, the state is quick to cast judgment on Mr. Avery's new witness and the information he provided without producing any evidence and or arguing that any evidence rebuts anything attested to by Mr. Sowinski. However, besides Mr. Avery's counsel's verification of Mr. Sowinski's background and information he provided, the record itself supports the veracity of Mr. Sowinski's affidavit and corroborates his statements. Among other evidence discovered by Mr. Avery's counsel, Mr. Sowinski's affidavit is consistent with Mr. Ramlo's affidavit that he spotted the RAV4 on Highway 147 east of Avery Salvage Yard on November 3 and 4. See affidavits of Kevin Ramlo attached as Exhibit B. Additionally, Mr. Sowinski's affidavit is consistent with the affidavit of Bobby Dassey's own brother, Blaine Dassey, in which he attested that he saw Bobby in the possession of driving a bluish-green vehicle Blaine did not recognize from the Avery property onto Highway 147 around 3:30 to 3:40 p.m. on October 31st, the day Teresa Halbach disappeared. See affidavit of Blaine Dassey attached as Exhibit C. All this aside, the state's criticism of the veracity of Mr. Sowinski's statements is inappropriate for this court to consider anyway. It is not for this court, but rather for the circuit court sitting as the trier of fact to weigh the evidence as presented at trial. Langlade County versus Latay. Due regard shall be given to the opportunity of the trial court judge to the credibility of the witness. Cited another case there. The state's response merely substantiates that a conflict concerning Mr. Sowinski's credibility demands that the circuit court's intervention for a credibility determination. 3. Mr. Avery's motion is proper. As the state's response acknowledges, the decision to remand is left to the court's decision. In its response, the state makes unfounded accusations of Mr. Avery's counsel trying to delay Mr. Avery's appeal. The state should be reminded that this court previously granted 3 of the 4 motions Mr. Avery filed to remand and supplement his post-conviction motion. See remand orders dated 9/18/611 227, attached as Group Exhibit D. Like Mr. Avery's current motion, none of these were considered frivolous nor filed for an improper purpose, as the state now argues. Therefore, the state's convoluted argument that Mr. Avery somehow does not have a right to file a motion to stay his appeal and remand his case does not have any merit. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 974.06, all grounds for relief available to a person must be raised in his or her original, supplemental, or amended motion. Mr. Sowinski's affidavit supports Mr. Avery's claim that the state has engaged in a pattern of withholding exculpatory and or impeaching evidence from the defense. In addressing a Brady claim, a court is required to assess the cumulative impact of all the suppressed evidence to determine its materiality. Mr. Avery submits that this court's reasoning in its February 27, 2019 remand order that, due to this case's extensive history, there is a benefit to having existing claims developed or litigated while they are relatively fresh, rather than positioning the claims to be procedurally barred in a future proceeding, should apply here. See remand order dated 2/27/2019, pages 2 and 3, attaches Group D-3. Mr. Avery has brought this issue to the court's attention in a timely manner that the information Mr. Sowinski provided was not discovered and investigated by Mr. Avery's counsel until after the briefs were submitted in this appeal and should not affect this court's decision whether to remand Mr. Avery's case. Mr. Avery does not want to waive this issue by not addressing it at this time. The appeal must be stayed, and this issue must be remanded to the court for proceedings that should include a hearing concerning the undisclosed phone call of Mr. Sowinski made to Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office. The undisclosed phone call and information Mr. Sowinski provided to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office is exculpatory and or impeaching evidence which contradicts the state's primary witness, Bobby Dassey's testimony, and inculpates Bobby Dassey as a third-party suspect pursuant to Denny. The state cannot credibly argue that Mr. Sowinski did not contact Mr. Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office with information related to seeing Bobby and another unidentified man pushing the RAV4 before the RAV4 was discovered on the Avery property on November 5th, 2005. The state's actions demand that further proceedings be conducted to determine if Mr. Avery's due process rights have been violated under Brady. For reasons above, the court should allow Mr. Avery's appeal to be stayed and remanded to the circuit court for further proceedings to determine whether Mr. Avery can supplement his motion to support his claim that the state violated his constitutional right under Brady. Conclusion. Wherefore, undersigned counsel respectfully request that this court enter an order staying this appeal and remanding the cause to the circuit court to permit Mr. Avery to pursue a supplemental post-conviction motion in connection with Mr. Avery's discovery of previously suppressed evidence by the state. Dated this day, 22nd day of April, 2021. Respectfully submitted, Kathleen Zellner and Stephen Richards. And the certificate of service, I do believe we have a number of exhibits. Here's one signed by Kathleen herself. You guys want me to read this? Or you want to cover it later? We can go through this later if you want to get right to the meat of the motion, or the reply, I mean.
Go for it, Jack.
Okay. Affidavit of Kathleen Zellner. Now comes your affiant, Kathleen T. Zellner, and under oath hereby states as follows. Number 1, your affiant is of legal majority and can truthfully and competently testify as to the matters contained herein based upon my personal knowledge. The factual statements herein are true and correct to the best of affiant's knowledge, information, and belief. Your affiant is of sound mind and is not taking any medication, nor has your affiant ingested any alcohol that would impair your affiant's memory of the facts stated in this affidavit. Number 2, your affiant is the lead counsel for Stephen Avery in case number 05 CF 381. Your affiant states that on December 26, 2020, at 10:42 p.m., her law office received an email from an individual by the name of Thomas D. Sowinski. Mr. Sowinski's email is attached and incorporated herein as Exhibit 1. Number 4, your affiant reviewed the email carefully and decided to conduct a thorough background investigation of Mr. Sowinski before contacting him. Number 5, your affiant reviewed all materials related to the Avery case, including all prior discovery requests, witness affidavits, and interviews to determine if Mr. Sowinski could be determined to be a credible witness. Number 6, your affiant also reviewed all discovery requests that she had made since assuming the representation of Mr. Avery in 2016. Specifically, your affiant made the following request. Quotation, please provide a copy of the dispatch logs related to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office case number 2005 8884 is the last 4 digits, and or documenting log that exists related to the communications between Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, dispatch, and law enforcement, as well as with any private citizens. Mr. Larry Ledvana, Deputy Inspector at the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, responded, "We do not have any recordings from that time period," emphasis added. Your affiant realized that any phone calls from Mr. Sowinski to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office had been destroyed. This request and the response are attached as incorporated as herein as a Group Exhibit 2. Your affiant's law firm conducted an investigation of Mr. Sowinski, which included gathering information about the following: his date of birth, relatives, employment history, telephone numbers, email addresses, possible criminal conduct, possible civil record, and car ownership. Number 8, your affiant's law firm confirmed that Mr. Sowinski had worked at the Manitowoc Herald-Times during the relevant time period. Financial documents dating 2005-2006, as well as newspaper articles from 2005-2006, listing Mr. Sowinski as a paper carrier of the Manitowoc Herald-Times are attached and incorporated hereto as Group Exhibit 3. Number 9. Your affiant's law firm confirmed that Mr. Sowinski emailed the Innocence Project on January 7, 2016, regarding his witness observations. Attached and incorporated herein are Exhibit 4 is a copy of the relevant email. Your affiant confirmed that Mr. Dean String and Mr. Avery's prior attorney did not have email from Thomas D. Sowinski, but he could not confirm whether Mr. Buting had received an email because when Mr. Buting switched email services, some of his prior emails had been inadvertently deleted. Number 10. On April 1st, 2021, a request was made to your affiant's investigators, Edward R. Kirby and Associates, that a further investigation be done of Thomas D. Sowinski as delineated in the affidavit of James R. Kirby. Number 11. On April 9, 2021, your affiant's law firm conducted an interview of Mr. Sowinski by telephone and prepared an affidavit reflecting that interview. Mr. Sowinski was visiting relatives in Manitowoc County. Number 12. On April 10, 2021, James R. Kirby drove to Manitowoc County to interview Mr. Sowinski and review the accuracy of his affidavit, which was based on his telephone interview conducted by your affiant's law firm. Mr. Sowinski executed the affidavit, which was notarized by Mr. Kirby. Mr. Sowinski's affidavit is attached and incorporated herein as Exhibit 5. 13. On April 12, 2021, your affiant's law firm filed defendant's appellant's motion to stay, appeal, and remand the case. Remand the cause for Mr. Avery to supplement his post-conviction motion with a new witness affidavit establishing a Brady violation and a third-party Denny suspect. Number 14. Mr. Sowinski confirmed on April 21st, 2021, with your affiant that he did not know of any reward money being offered and that if money were given to him, he would donate it to the Halbach family. Whoa. Mr. Sowinski text messages is attached and incorporated into hereto as Exhibit 6. 15. Your affiant and her law firm hold the opinion that Mr. Sowinski is a credible witness based upon the extensive investigation your affiant conducted as described above in the affidavit of James R. Kirby. Further affiant saith not, signed by Kathleen Zellner on April 22nd, 2021. And here's the email. Let's pause here and open it up for a little discussion. Doc, surely you got something to say here. I know people got something to say. Come on.
So far, I'm loving what I'm hearing. She's got really great points. She's not allowing them to be, dismissive of Stephen and all of the things that she has applied for his appeal.
Well, and the right off the bat, knowing that this is started back in December, so here we are, literally almost 4 months later, and they're just saying that, well, this guy just came up, and you're just trying to delay the appeal, but in reality, she's been looking at this guy for 4 months, her and her investigator. So it's not just a one-off. So that kind of blows the state's what they said in their reply pretty much out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, I like that she raised all the points about them being so dismissive and how unacceptable it is.
I agree. Nosy?
That's my favorite part.
Nosy, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we don't hear you, darling.
She left. I guess she's going to come back.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just making a point. I want to know more information about the fact that his statement matches Ramlow. I mean, I know it's pretty basic, but I thought that was really interesting for her to include that in there.
I agree. It is very interesting. And, another really big point for me is that she talked about the dispatch calls. And, of course, at this point in time, it's not surprising. They have a 3-year retention policy. I know Calumet does, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in Manitowoc. I'm almost positive it is. So 3 years, they hold, and I say 3-year retention, for things like audio, possibly even video. I don't know. But after 3 years, they don't have to hold it any further. Again, that's not to say that there's not a copy out there. If they made a copy for a lawyer or whatever, then that copy probably would still exist, and maybe the original got burned. But it appears that whenever this phone call happened, if it was during the time period that Rookie got the dispatch calls from Manitowoc, the November 3rd through November 12th, it was not part of it. I mean, I've listened to those calls a couple of times. It's hard to recall everything, but I do not remember anything like what he describes. So,
remember, they also picked and chose which calls they wanted to include in that copy. It was like, there's only maybe, I don't even remember how many calls, maybe 20, 30 calls between that time, because they were basically forwarding them to the Calumet County Sheriff.
Well, yeah, the ones that when they were in pretrial, the ones that when Remaker, he slipped up and said, oh yeah, he'd been reviewing the prior dispatch calls, which they had been trying to be they tried to get for months and hadn't gotten anything. They turned over, it was either 29 or 30 calls that were undated on a CD. And at that point in time, that's all they had.
Which means they could have purposely done that because of other calls that were coming in.
Oh, I'm sure.
The paper boy.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And shouldn't they have gotten all of the dispatch calls that at that time? Not like they were fighting to get those dispatch calls too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
The attorney. So why did they pick and choose? I'm a little curious to why, when they got their little track number phone calls, why they didn't ask for more calls.
I don't know. The criteria. I mean, I don't. I guess they turned over to the defense the calls that Remaker had listened to, so it was a very small window of time, and I think that was probably on. Gosh, when were those calls? The 3rd, the 5th, and I can't remember of that CD what the date range was, but regardless of the fact, there was a ton of calls I didn't get at all.
And it's possible that he called, say, the 14th or the 15th instead of the 12th, up until the 12th, if that's all they had anyway.
Well,
So
yeah, it's possible
that they didn't even ask for that piece of evidence.
That's right.
So to speak.
Right.
Which doesn't give them the right to withhold it, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely not. No, I agree. Dr. Silkman?
Yeah, Jack, if I could just make a couple of points.
Please do.
The observation by Ramlow is completely consistent because it shows that you have another independent witness that saw the RAV4 out or off the Avery salvage yard. So the mere factor that this witness, Ramlow, is independent of Sowinski further adds to the credence that that Teresa Horbach had in actual fact left the Avery salvage yard, as Stephen Avery said. But the other important point that Kathleen Zellner made in her filing was the observation of Blaine. The fact that he believes he saw his brother, Bobby Dassey, in a blue-green vehicle, right?
That's right. Yep.
Now, we know that Bobby Dassey doesn't drive a blue-green vehicle. He's got a black Blazer, I believe. So now the amazing, well, first of all, it looks like Kathleen Zellner did do her due diligence. And, this just really strengthens Sowinski's affidavit. I reckon, Jack, you should read out the email that Sowinski wrote.
Okay, let's do that right now.
Yeah, because that was done in December 26, 2020. I reckon you should read it out.
Blow that up a little bigger because it's, my screen is pretty small. I hope y'all can read that. And that's pretty
Joris
good there.
tweeted it out too. If anyone is on, if you can't read it here, you can see it on Twitter too.
Okay. This is dated, like I said, December 26th, 2020. Just finished second season. I lived there at the time. I was a motor route driver that was on the property every day to deliver newspapers. A few days before they found the RAV, I was a delivery papers at about 1 to 2 a.m. and saw Bobby Dassey and another old man pushing the RAV4 down the road towards the junkyard. No lights at all. I almost hit them. They were very spooked. As you know, it's a dead-end street. After delivery paper, I had to go right back past them. Dassey stood in the road next to the RAV, trying to stop me from getting by. As I approached, my headlights were on them 100%. The other guy hid behind the passenger door that was open from pushing the vehicle. I didn't slow down and drove into the ditch to get by, waving as I said, "Paper boy, gotta go." Dassey had no shirt on, and the other guy had a very scraggly beard, and seemed to be in his 60s. I did call police, and they said that they would contact me. They never did. After season 1, I emailed an attorney of Stevens and no response. I've decided to reach out one more time as this information seems vital, especially what I just watched. Live in Denver now, but lived in Manitowoc for over 20 years. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, the important point there, Jack, if I can just
please do.
make a comment, is the fact that he actually gave a time in which he delivered the paper, and it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
And
so
a few days before it was discovered.
Yeah, well, that negates the fact that potentially Stephen or someone on the property, could have been awake, or the paper boy delivered the newspaper at very early in the morning, right? So there would have hardly been anybody around.
That's right.
And again, what is disturbing is that Sowinski names Bobby Dassey. And not only that, he had a very good look at Bobby Dassey. So, he states in his email that he did call the police and he didn't get a response back. So, there are slight differences to the email compared to the affidavit. But I suppose when he gave his affidavit, they would have, the person taking the affidavit would have carefully questioned him. And so it's interesting. What day did he actually see this event take place? Right? It had to be after the 31st.
Yep.
It had to be before the 5th. And we know from the flyover that there was no RAV4 in the pit. We know from Earl's observations that there was no RAV4 in the pit. So it seems to me that the only potential time it could have been placed down there was the morning of the 5th. So that's really, really interesting.
I'm trying to find this. Let's see. I want to tell him that's where the older man down the road. I'm trying to find that spot there where he said this is a few days. Yeah, he says, as I approached my headlights, we're on them 100%. But the thing about it, there are, I don't know who all has a potential garage, or a garage, not potential, but a garage on the Avery salvage property. I don't know it well enough, from the other houses where this, a vehicle could be held. If this is what happened, it was moved to the property, put somewhere, and then later moved to the location where it was found. I'm just throwing it out there because
that's a possibility, but jeepers, that's a very risky move when you consider that you've got both Stephen, Chuck, and Earl that work around those properties, and they go in those garages, right? Because they store various car parts, and they're gonna spot a RAV4. That's a highly risky move to do.
Well, and it looks pretty new as well. So
yes, it does. It seems to me that if you're gonna place it on the property, you want to move it to the pit in one hit, right? But
I agree.
Again, it really begs the question: what the hell? Let's just say it wasn't Bobby Dassey. What the hell are these two guys doing, pushing a RAV4 onto the salvage yard at that early hours of the morning, right? That's highly, highly suspicious.
And he seems very sure of himself too. He's not pulling any punches. It's like, I've got this information. I've had it. I've been trying to get people to listen to me, and no one is. No one's listening to me. That's what I get from his email.
Yep, correct. Iced coffee.
Yeah, hi. For me, I just thought it was interesting that she clears up the questions raised by the state in terms of Sowinski's credibility. And then we were questioning around the level of investigation that had been done on him. And I know the state questioned his motivations regarding, the money. And I thought it was interesting that he said that would be donated to the Holbach family.
Well, you know what? That completely took a very important point away from the state, right? Because the state were alleging that, oh, he came forward because of the reward money. Well,
Right.
excuse
Yeah.
me, look what he just said.
That's
He
right.
said he'll donate it to the Hallbuck family.
That's big.
That is huge. In other words, I'm not doing this because I want reward money. I'm doing this because this is what I saw. And,
That's right.
that's incredible.
Also, he wrote an email in 2016, early on in January,
That's right.
a little further down,
Yeah,
which
that
was
sounds good.
before any reward money was even offered.
That's
anyway.
right.
So,
And he made the phone call. Yeah, this is the reply to the motion, or I guess, or this is what they sent to the Matchbox to get the phone call, because they're referencing the 8844 number there. So, and then our next,
scrolling down, and you'll see the actual other email he sent to.
yeah, I haven't got that far down. I literally read this as soon as we got it. I didn't scroll anywhere into it at all. I read it raw. So,
his statement makes me think too about where the license plate was found, because the license plate in the area that was found, that would be on Bobby's way walking back to his house.
Sure it would.
And he just tosses it off to the left.
Chunked it in there.
It lands into a car.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because we've discussed this many times, right? You have a look at where the RAV4 is. The RAV4 is at the perimeter, right? It's not deep within the yard, right? So in other words, if someone is bringing that RAV4 in the middle of the night, right, the last thing you want to do is take it down lanes where there's potentially hundreds of other vehicles, right? It's going to be a nightmare to try and place the RAV there. But if it's on the perimeter of the RAV4, you just simply push it until you find a convenient spot. And the other scary thing is, there are parts from the actual salvage yard that are on the RAV, right? Like the hood and other bits and pieces. Well, someone like Bobby Dassey will be familiar, right? Because he lives on the salvage yard.
Sure.
Right. So he'll be familiar with, scraps and parts which are around it. Now, I'm not saying it's Bobby Dassey, but I'm saying if it was, he would be familiar with, components and other things. And that's a really good point. You're right. Where were the number plates placed? They were placed on the perimeter as well. Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Everything was on the perimeter, if you think about it.
Correct.
Like even the electronics were in the barrel off of the other side of the road.
That's correct.
Avery.
Correct.
But I'd like to remind you guys that they also flew over on the 4th, and they zoomed in on that car the plates were found in. So that's always suspicious to me too.
I'm glad.
How would the cops know to zoom in there? And they could have seen, Rambler hoods near where they were going to plant it too if it was the cops. So
yes,
just to,
well, correct. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, that's really kind of another thing, because all he's saying is, I saw Bobby and another dude pushing the RAV down the road. That's all he's saying. The rest of it, that goes into to me that goes into another situation.
I don't think it is another situation. I mean, I do think so, but I don't. I mean, it's very hard, and we don't have enough time. But
well, no. What I'm saying is he's not describing them placing it in that spot. All he saw was them pushing it down the road. Now we can take that further and say, yeah, that's where they put it, was right there. So, but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, we'll get more, as time progresses.
Well, for me, if we go with this theory, and Bobby pushed the RAV, he left it there, and then I don't know where the other dude just vanishes off to, but Bobby's walking back to the house, and he's got the license plate, crumbled it all up, walking back, chunks it off to his left side. It lands in that car, and then he's got Teresa's key. So the first second Steven's out of the house, he just goes in Steven's house and throws the fucking key in a random spot. or did the cops plant the key?
Well, my personal opinion is that they did, but I think they felt like he did it, and they just basically helped the case. That's what I think. But
I can see that too, where they could see more things leaning towards Bobby, but that was not going to help their case against Stephen.
correct.
And
That's
because
exactly
it was
right.
all in the same family, all on the same property, it was very easy for them to frame Stephen.
Sure. Especially if there's some animosity already, some jealousy. He's getting a pile of money. There was jealousy. There was. There had to be.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. But anyway, moving on down go ahead.
I was just going to bring up the point again about Bobby having no legal representation at court. So for me, that's a big factor too. Not against Bobby, but against the state's motives
Correct.
with Bobby.
Right. I agree. I agree. Yeah. But moving on to this, this is the I guess the email that James Kirby sent to Manitowoc to get that phone call. And having received this is from Larry Lavana. I received your request for the recordings of the call from November 3rd. We do not have recordings from that time period. For any document request, be specific on what documents and cases you're requesting. Thank you. So that's not shocking to me, though. And then here's a newspaper clipping, obviously. Thank you, carriers. And he is... which one is he? There's Bruce. I don't see him there.
I don't think he's pictured.
Apparently not. Maybe he's probably named in there, and I'm not going to go through and read all of them because it looks like there's dozens and dozens, but we can come back. We can always, talk about that later. Another thank you to all Herald Times reporters and Lakeshore Chronicle carriers. Got their names listed, I guess. I'm sure he's probably listed in there that she wouldn't have included it.
He is listed. It is alphabetical order. And if the second one is from October of 2006, and the first one is October 2006, and the other one's 2015. So he was there for at least a year, is what I'm seeing. So, I mean, that just furthers the validity that he did work there, and I get them doing their due diligence. I'm not sure what this is. Case summary, standard discharge. Looks like something for Sowinski. It looks like it's some kind of bad debt thing. Okay, we'll move on past that. Says employment, delivery. That's his contractor for Garnet News. That's his bankruptcy stuff. From October of 2005. Okay, here's another email. Looks like this one might be to the Innocence Project. Is that right? January 7th, 2016. I'll read through this one too, see what it says. And see if we can pick up anything else from this one. I'll blow it up here a little bit bigger so everybody can possibly read it off my screen. Looks like it was sent on January 7th, 2016 at 1:43 p.m. Hello, my name is Thomas Sowinski, and I delivered newspapers to the Avery residents every day for years. I delivered newspapers at the time of the Hallbach situation. Somewhere between October 31st and November 5th, not sure which day, I turned down Avery Road to deliver their paper, and when I almost ran into two people pushing a dark-colored small SUV down the road with absolutely no lights on. It was dark as I delivered papers as soon as possible each day so I could get home in time to get my son ready for school and drop him off. As I passed by them, I realized I had stumbled onto something that seemed out of place. I spooked both of them tremendously. I drove down the dead-end road and the paper in the tube and turned around to come back down the road. I knew I was in a shady situation, so I approached them with a good amount of speed to get around them fast.
As I approached the guy pushing from the driver's side door, stopped and tried to stop me in the middle of the road. I went half in the ditch and just waved at them, to the men, thinking I was oblivious to what was going on. I didn't see who the man was on the passenger side. Oh, I didn't see on the passenger side, but the young man, maybe 18 or so, that tried to stop me was not Brendan Dassey. His build was thin and fit at around 5 feet 9 inches tall. Days later, after seeing the footage on TV of the RAV4 being found on the property, it clicked that it was probably the SUV I had seen that night. I called police and notified them. They didn't seem interested at all and said, "Thanks for the info." Never asked me to fill out a report or even asked me my name or phone number. At the time, I just figured they had enough evidence and were not concerned with my information. After seeing the documentary on Netflix, I decided that someone other than Manitowoc County officials needs to hear this. They were pushing in the direction towards the house from the highway. I feel obligated to share this now that I know something of the circumstances involving the way Manitowoc handled the case. Wow, that's interesting. But again, that shows he tried to do the right thing. In his mind, he wanted to get it reported and out there so it could be investigated. Before I move forward,
the important point here is before Zellner got involved, the gist of his story is essentially the same, right? So it's not that he modified or changed his story drastically just because Zellner got involved. The gist is the same. And interesting, he actually says that it wasn't Brendan Dassey who he had seen.
right?
So, again, his description here is non-specific in terms of he doesn't name Bobby Dassey, but he gives a description, right? So, again, the basic gist is that he saw two individuals pushing the RAV4 onto the salvage yard in the early hours of the morning. And that's a very interesting observation.
And I mean, it's probably, he probably had seen Brendan on TV and
yes,
and knew that, hey, that's not Brendan, that's who they've accused, and all this other stuff, and then saw a picture of Bobby at some point, whatever.
And recognized him.
Yep.
And recognized him. Correct.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah. Iced coffee.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I know we'd had a bit of discussion about whether Strang and Buchan had been aware of it, and I picked out the point where they say about the change of servers and that, there might have been a loss of emails through that.
Yep.
In relation to the Innocence Project email?
No, that was in relation to the email they weren't sure if Buting got it. They didn't. I guess they didn't email String, but they weren't sure if Buting. I guess they'd emailed Buting, but they weren't sure if he got it because he changed servers. But he did email the Innocence Project.
Can you hear me? Maybe he just the Innocence Project and not the lawyers, thinking it was the lawyers.
Susan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I find it interesting that whoever he sent that email to January of 2006, right after Man 1 came out, did not turn it over to his lawyers.
That is
especially
interesting.
If it was the Innocence Project, especially.
Yeah, I think that's what she said. That let's see if it says here. It does not. I don't see an address of where it was emailed to. I can't answer that. Don't know yet. But that is interesting for sure. Okay, do we have anything else before I move a little bit further down the Dr. Silkman?
Well, it's probably worth reading out what's on page 32, Jack.
32. I guess this is Judge Suckowitz prior rulings.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's an overhead.
This is about the reward money. This is about the reward money. I think that might be worth reading out. Okay.
Here it says, I just want to let you know that I never heard of any $100,000 reward until after this just all recently came out. Of course, money is nice, but this was never about a reward. I never knew of a reward. And if the $100,000 ever happens to get released to me, I would like to donate it all to the Halbach family. I don't like my integrity being questioned. Feel free to make this public. Thomas Sowinski. It's very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, sure is. And I think also what it does is it takes out a powerful element that the state were allegedly trying to use. You know, this guy only came forward because of the reward money. Well, that just white-anted that idea, and that's really rather noble of him, and an incredible gesture.
I think so too. I really do. Yeah. It looks like this is another ruling by. Oh, this is from James Kirby. So this is a prior one. This is a current one. I'm not going to read all of his affidavit out. Let's see what else we got here. This is the older affidavit of Kevin Ramlow. I don't know if we want to take any pause here or not, but I think we all pretty well agree this lines up with what he said in his affidavit. And, everybody's aware that, there's probably a beef between Ramlow and Colburn, but, I get that, but. And then next we have, looks like a poster. It's pretty bad copy. It's actually pretty terrible. A picture of Mr. Colburn. And this is a text.
Does anyone know what George Zipper and Jason Zipper looked like back then?
Ooh, good question, Jinxie.
There might be a photo of George on. Can't remember where I saw it. I don't know if yours may have had it. I can't recall. There may be though.
There is a confusion because there is more than one George Zipper on Facebook in that area. It's not the same George and his wife. So I've never actually seen a picture of him.
I can't remember if where I saw this was. I don't remember. I know it was. It seemed like I remember of an older gentleman, but I can't remember if it was George Zipper or if it was another one of these people that were not necessarily a witness, but somebody involved. And this is this is a text from Kevin Ramlow. And then here's the affidavit of Blaine. I think this is the older affidavit that was filed some time ago. And
Jack,
yep.
Just on Blaine's affidavit,
yep.
I reckon a relevant point to read out is point number 20.
Point 20. On October 31st. Yeah. On October 31st, 2005, when the school bus driver brought Brendan and me home as we traveled west on STH State Highway 147, I saw Bobby on State Highway 147 in a bluish or greenish vehicle heading towards Mishcot. Bobby was not driving his black Blazer. Bobby was not home the rest of the evening while I was home. Attached and incorporated here in Exhibit A. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, it sure is. And you see, if that is indeed correct, if that observation is correct, then what we have here now are two bookends, and that's really, really damaging. you've got his own brother. Now, his brother would recognize his brother, right?
Oh,
No one can say, that was a misidentification. So
yeah.
Blaine allegedly saw Bobby and now notice what he said, a blue-green. How
That's
many
right.
times have people said the RAV4 was blue? No, it was green. Well, he actually said a bluish-greenish vehicle, right? So he saw his brother in a bluish-greenish vehicle on the 31st. And it looks like Sowinski, if the date is correct, saw Bobby Dassey with the same vehicle, allegedly the same vehicle, on November the 5th, right? We sort of narrowed it down to November the 5th when you look at all the potential dates, right? So now this is incredible. You got a bookend observation by two independent witnesses seeing the same person with the same, allegedly the same vehicle.
That's right.
I don't know about you guys, but that is
Well,
very, very damning.
It brings up
very damning.
It brings up just all kinds of visions of something really bad happening, nefarious or not. If that's true, then that means that sometime after she left the property, something went down sideways, and she's in, probably in the back of it, and he's driving it somewhere to be, put away.
That's
at
correct.
Least,
that's
right?
correct. And when you look at the evidence, right? Kathleen's. If you look at all the testimonies, we know that Bobby Dassey was one of the last people to see Teresa Halbach alive, right? He said so.
That's right.
He observed her from the kitchen window, right?
That's right.
He saw her drive up. He saw her take photographs, and he said that I saw Teresa Halbach walking towards my uncle's trailer. What's interesting is that when Stephen came out, Bobby's blazer was gone, right?
Yep.
And according to Stephen Avery, he saw Teresa Halbach's vehicle turn left on Highway 147, right?
That's right.
But he didn't see Bobby Dassey. So it's interesting that now, if you look at the scenario that Kathleen Zellner put forward, the fact that he followed her, and it was for like a hustle shot, to get a hustle shot, that now brings everything into sharp focus, because we absolutely know that Bobby Dassey, Scott Tadich, and Teresa Halbach were all in the same location at the same time. I'm not saying Bobby Dassey did anything nefarious, but it seems to fit. The mere fact that at 3:30, 3:45, Blaine saw his brother in a bluish-greenish vehicle. Oh my God! If that observation is correct, Bobby's got some explanation to do, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It brings up just all kinds of scenarios. Of course, it's pure speculation. There's just a huge gap, but damn. Two independent
Correct.
people seeing him with that RAV.
Yeah. But not only that, you see, one of them is a family member. One of them is his brother.
Yeah.
Right. So that leads more credence and more weight into an observation. Right.
That's right.
Furthermore, it was on October the 31st. Right. The very day that she's gone missing, because no one saw her after October the 31st. And now you've got Sowinski, who possibly on November the 5th saw two guys pushing a RAV4 onto the Avery salvage yard, and he actually named Bobby Dassey. Jeepers, that's pretty damning to me, Jack.
Didn't he also tell? I can't remember which brother, but didn't Bobby also tell Brian that he saw her drive off?
Correct. Well, Brian Dassey in an affidavit said that he saw, when he spoke to his brother Bobby said to him, "Yes, I saw Teresa Halbach go off the property."
And
right?
he told that to the, I can't remember if it was DCI Sowinski or one of the DCI agents. That's what he told them.
And then when Bobby Dassey was re-interviewed, he goes, "I don't know what Brian's talking about." So, it's starting to look a bit worrisome for Bobby, in my opinion.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But we must show caution again. You can't speculate. But I think he's got a lot of it. I mean, the mere factor that Kathleen Zellner has focused on Bobby, to me, that's a worry. If I was Bobby, I would be concerned.
Well, you've got these two these two things that are completely independent of him being around that rabbit. It's really scary. I mean, I'll say scary.
Well,
it's eye-opening to me,
yeah,
really.
Yeah. Well, you see, the common denominator in all of this is Bobby Dassey.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say. The common denominator at both bookends, October the 31st and November the 5th, is Bobby Dassey.
Of course, we got a wild card out there of the gray-haired,
that's right,
this older person.
Yeah. Yes. When all these observations are stacked up, there's got to, where there's smoke, there's fire. You know what I'm trying to say?
That's right.
And we discussed this in one of our MAM presentations, where the story 100% divulges is between Bobby Dassey and Stephen Avery, right? Stephen Avery says, "Oh, look, I saw her leave." Bobby Dassey goes, No, I saw Teresa Hallbach walking towards my uncle's trailer. And when I left, her vehicle was still there, but I didn't see Teresa Hallbach. Hey, that is the turning point of this entire case. Who do you believe, Bobby Dassey or Stephen Avery? And somebody in chat says, whose story has been consistent from day one? And it is Stephen Avery.
That's right.
It's Stephen Avery from day one. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that he's been 100% truthful, but the main gist of his story has been consistent from the get-go.
Well, yeah, nothing too major has really shaken out of the tree from what he said from the beginning. We really need that November 9th audio interview that Bobby's with the cops.
Correct. And and if you now add the contents of the CD that was really withheld from the defense, the real damaging violent porn that was present on the computer,
the CD,
the Veely CD.
Mm-hmm.
Again, who's the central key player in that?
That's right,
Bobby Dassey.
That's
and
right.
the reason why Kathleen Zellner is so confident is because she can timestamp when the searches were done. The searches were done even on October the 31st when Bobby Dassey was home. Everybody else was at work or at school, right? So she can timestamp it. And again, it looks very damaging because Bobby said, no, it wasn't me. I was asleep.
That's right. And clearly there was
Yep. I don't think a computer auto searches for violent porn by itself.
No.
Right?
No.
So again, if Kathleen Zellner gets her day in court, she's going to present the shopping list against Bobby. We have this, we have this, we have this. Right?
That's right.
And so, Brady violation, Denny suspects, it's gonna look really bad for Bobby, but it's gonna look really good for Stephen Avery because the spotlight goes away from Stephen and Brendan and is now on somebody else.
Well, I mean, to me, it all spells out if this, even half of what we've just talked about was given to the jury. We know the jury so much was withheld, but just what we've talked about today was put into the front of the jury. To me, it's automatic reasonable doubt. There's just how can you cross that bridge and say, oh, Avery definitely did it, but we've heard this over here. There's just no way.
Correct. And you know what? Had that phone call by Sowinski been documented and had the contents of the CD been available for the defense, Could you imagine Strang and Buting presenting the contents of that phone call from Sowinski, the observation of Blaine, and also the contents of the CD in court against the star witness of the state?
Yep.
Oh my God.
I know.
It would have been, and that's exactly what Kathleen Zellner is pushing. The fact that that information was not available for the defense at that time. So you can bet your bottom dollar that there is no way they want Kathleen Zellner to present any of this in court. No way.
That's why that Josh went so to the lengths he did to try to completely destroy and discredit Sowinski, and he really even attacked Zellner, which that's pretty typical.
Correct. Yeah. So, I am very impressed that Zellner wrote the response in the manner that she did.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes to show that she was playing a chess game. So, in other words, she had actually done her due diligence, had all the information, waited for the state to make themselves look like a bunch of idiots, and look how she replied. Bang! Here's the evidence. Here are the emails. He was talking about this stuff way before I got involved, and nobody did a thing.
That's right. Okay.
Jack, is there anything more to read out?
Nope. The rest of it was stuff we already had in the past. So, no, that was it. I scrolled through it, and it was prior rulings and other prior things that we already had. So, not really, no.
Thank you, Jack. You did such a good job.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Is there anybody else have comments or speculations or thoughts? Get it out now, because if not, then we can move on. Susan?
I'm just curious, what date did Kathleen get involved with Stephen?
It was sometime in January. I can't tell you the date right now, but I know it was sometime in January of 2016. And I'm thinking it was, I'm not going to say. I just know it was somewhere that time in January 2016. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I mean, everybody's basically covered it, but I knew that she wouldn't have put that last brief motion out there without having some sort of proof. And she's just came and slapped the state with a big wet fish right in the face and said, this is what I've investigated and this is what I've got, and it's been gone on for months. So it's basically an up yours to the state.
Oh, well, yeah, it basically is. And I think we all kind of figured, Doc, that you can say it, that we all felt like that there was just no way she got this information, a few days ago and says, oh boy, let me just halt this whole appeal process and throw it out there. No way.
Correct. Yeah. She had done her due diligence. And the scary thing is, remember, she's the one that also did the reconstruction. Remember the reconstruction?
Yes.
About the fact that if Bobby Dassey had actually followed her, and it now that gives credence to her reconstruction, because, like I said, it now puts Bobby Dassey and Teresa Hallbach in the same location.
I agree. Sammy?
Yep. We have a question here. Kim Hogan is asking, how long do the state have to reply to this? Well, it looks like they have an eternity, don't they?
No, I think
the state or the court.
I don't know if the state gets another bite at the apple or not. They might, but the court can take all the time they want. But I think the state probably has a time limit. That would be a lawyer question, though, that I cannot answer.
By the way, Kathleen entered the case on 1/20/2016.
Thank you. So that was a few days after he had sent that email to the Innocence Project.
Thank you, Nosy.
That was actually Jinx.
I know. Sorry, Jinx.
Jeez, we're sounding alike now. Oh my God.
No, I just meant to say Jinx. I said
You're
no.
stuck with me forever.
I'm not the first one that's done that.
I know.
Okay. Any more questions out there, Sammy? Anyone that's following chat? I apologize. I try to follow chat as much as I can. But
there's been all kinds of conversation basically about, George Zipper and his grandson, maybe the two people. There's just been questions, and people have been looking up photos, trying to figure that out. But it's hard, you have to have an exact time frame and be lucky enough to find a current photo for that particular day or time frame. So
I agree. Yeah.
There's, just a lot of different things getting thrown around here, but it's a very interesting conversation, and I love it, and I want to thank everybody for showing up.
Well, I mean,
question.
Yep.
Sorry, a question from Jeff Jones. How many original prosecutors are still involved?
None.
None of them. None.
They're all gone. Every one of them.
I think most.
Okay.
I think most of them have headed to Argentina or South America, right, Jack?
Probably.
Also, there's been a question raised about the phone call that Scott had gotten that day, that they said he got a call and left all worried in a hurry from work. And I kind of recall that.
Oh, I recall it very well.
Verbatim.
That was a story that went around, way back not long after, information began really coming out in 2016 that allegedly that Scott Taddick had gotten a call from one of the Dassey boys at work, and he left in a guff and a rush, had said he had to go. And, but we don't have any real documentation to point that. So
no, but it's been something we all have heard all across it. Yeah.
Yep. In the zipper, and we've talked this one to death, but I think it's worth mentioning. I've always felt like from the very first encounter to the end of everything that was said at trial, the entire zipper encounter is just weird. Period. It's just weird. Maybe it's the way it's written up, but it to me, the way that I read it and it comes across is just really strange to me. It doesn't sound right. So I'll just leave it.
And then suddenly the zipper voicemail that she left at their house just appears, along with paperwork that she signed, gave the number, and then she actually dated it. That's missing too from the zippers.
That's right.
And then it's an old man and an 18-year-old, and George Zipper was not Jason's father; he was his grandfather.
So that's
to
right.
Give you an age difference in the two. One was just at the end of high school, and the other one was his grandfather, George.
That's right. Alice?
Bethany had a few questions about the area where Blaine seen Bobby driving. Was it close to the place with the foul-smelling fire that scared the cows?
Another interesting question that I cannot answer. Anybody in the chat?
That was Paul Metz. He was up on Xander and Jumbo Creek Road, like 5 miles away from their house. So I'm gonna say, Blaine was on the bus more towards his house in Avery Road. So about 5 miles away from where that statement was made. And he also made an affidavit saying they kind of screwed up his statement inside the report and, changed it with Zellner, what he really said or whatever.
Really, what would have been important to know is on that particular night, what time was he able to get his stack of papers off the press to do his route? Because that's really key to just, realizing where was that location on his route. Did he do the same run through of his route every single night, and time wise, what to try to pinpoint what time in the middle of the night that might have been.
It sounds like it's the same.
There's a lot of different factors.
just from what he said, that he would pick his papers up and try to get his route done as quickly as he could so he could get back to take his kid to school.
Yeah. So it's before they even go to school. So this is between probably 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. somewhere around there.
He said 12, 1 o'clock, I think is what he said in his affidavit there.
Okay. All right.
Rhonda? I'm sorry.
Between 1 and 2. No, he said between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
There you go.
Yep.
Rhonda, you have a question?
Yeah. Did somebody say how old Grandpa Zipper was or is, or
Jinx may know. Jinx may know. I think she.
He's 81 years old now, so that was 16 years ago. So he was probably in his 60s or so.
Ah, that sounds like an appropriate age group for the description,
right.
Huh?
Yep.
Yeah. And an 18-year-old.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And according to what we know, he was a drinker too.
Knowing these things kind of makes it fall into place a little better as to the possibilities.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always had just a really odd feeling that whatever happened with the zippers was a really convoluted story that had elements of maybe some of the truth, like the telemarketing call and, a few other things. Maybe, Jason had a car for sale, the Firebird or whatever it was. But a lot of this other stuff that was in it, it felt contrived. It didn't feel right the way it was written. Again, that a lot of times falls on the writer to how he imparts information. Another interesting thing, though, that I'm just reminded of with, the coroner being walled off from anything to do with the case. And here we have Mr. Dennis Jacobs going back on, what was it, Jinx the 6th, according to Dettering's report. A Manitowoc officer going back to the zippers to get the recording. Here we are, have major involvement here with probably the last message that Teresa left anyone. Right? So.
Yeah, because that message came at 2:12 or 2:15 or something that afternoon after the one on Avery's machine.
Yeah.
Or Brenda's machine.
That's right. Yep. Alice.
Jeff and Graham are kind of asking the same question about Bobby's statements. They're saying they think the first time he said he saw her, and the second time he saw her walking towards Stephen Avery. Can anyone confirm?
Well, I mean, from what I recall, of course, we're missing. His first statement. Go ahead.
Was it no that he see?
I think we lost Alice.
And
say that again, Alice. You're kind of cutting out.
Oh, am I right? Okay. They were asking about Bobby's statements, and I was saying that the first statement he said, he saw.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alice. You're really cutting out. He said, and then this stops. You might want to go out and come back.
While she's trying to reconnect, I told Graham, I said that I thought it was he saw Teresa Halbach walking towards the trailer before he got in the shower, and then when he got out of the shower,
he didn't see her.
Was still there, but he couldn't see her anywhere.
I think that sounds correct. Yeah. But then he also talked to a defense. Well, of course, the November 9th interview happened at the Aurora Medical Center, I believe it was. And then he also gave a statement to the defense, Foy, Avery's first defense. And I think the assistant, actually, I talked to Jinx about this recently, where I can't remember what he said there, but it wasn't that. It was different. It wasn't. I think he said he saw her leave. I think that's what's in that statement. But regardless, there were ever-changing statements from that. And of course, at trial, that was completely. Well, several things happened with Bobby's testimony that really the micro testimony, the date of the joke and all that. It really just kind of rocked everything. So, Rhonda, question?
What I remember, it seems like I recall when they were calling in, when law enforcement called into dispatch about, I think it was Colburn that called in and asked if there was any record charges or anything against Zipper, and she said only something. You guys know what I'm talking about? Find out if he had if George Zipper had any criminal charges or something. And the dispatcher answered something like, the only thing that he showed was, I don't know if it was a traffic ticket or something or nothing. No, does anybody? No one remembers? Okay, never mind.
I thought he had a domestic violence
Maybe,
or
okay.
something. And they were going to check the in-house computer, if I remember correctly, for anything else. I don't know if that was on Zipper or if that was on Avery. But I do recall what you're talking about. They did ask for his record into dispatch. I believe there is probably a call about that, right? I think on that Manitowoc.
That's what I remember. Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember hearing a call somewhere, but who knows where it is or where I heard it.
And remember, he was being belligerent when they tried calling him, and he was, I shot her, she was trespassing. Interesting statements that, kind of, he shot her, like, how would anybody know she was shot, and yet she supposedly died of a shot before anybody knew where her body was, right? So he's talking about it. That's a little interesting. He's starting to look a little more interesting to me. George Zipper.
Yeah.
I pulled up this that page that you sent me the other day, Jinx. We talked about this from the Innocence Project. Got this?
Okay. I don't know. That? You gotta read it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, this is where Foy interviewed Bobby, and he said, "I asked Bobby if he could tell me what he did on October 31st." Bobby states he worked third shift, got home about 6:30 a.m. And Bobby went to bed till about 2:30. When he woke up, he did see a vehicle parked out in front of the house near the tree. The girl, Teresa, was taking photos of the van that was for sale. Bobby jumped into the shower. When Bobby got out he looked outside and saw Steve walking towards Steve's trailer. Bobby grabbed his bow case and left. Bobby thought he left the house about 3 p.m. Bobby said that the girl's vehicle was still parked out in front as he drove off down the road. So there was nothing about Teresa walking towards the trailer. It was Stephen walking towards the trailer. So easily switching one word can alter a story completely.
And remember, so maybe Teresa was already in her car and leaving right after Bobby did, instead of Bobby leaving first. Yeah. Because remember, Steve walks in and says he put the books down he walked her to her vehicle, got a magazine, paid her the money, and he walked back in, put the magazine down, and then realized they did some kind of something or other, and then he was going to go and talk to Bobby. So maybe he saw Bobby leave, and by the time he walked out, Bobby was gone. That was like his original statement. So maybe she left like shortly after Bobby.
That's
He saw Stephen walking in after she closed her door to leave.
Right. It's very possible.
And I thought his shower was only 3 minutes, so how does it go from 2:30 to 3?
The timing is really off. Alice, are you back yet?
Yeah.
There you go. Me? Yeah, you're good.
Right.
Did we get anything yet?
Yes. It wasn't. I don't actually it came from Bobby. It was Bobby's brother, was it no, that said that Bobby told him he saw her leave.
That was Brian Dassey.
Yeah, that was Brian. He told Bobby, Brian said that Bobby told him he saw her drive off the property. There's no way Stephen could have done anything. And then he, of course, later denied saying that at all. But that was early. That was like, I want to say that report was like November 4th. Anybody confirm that? Does that sound right, Doc? I'm around November.
Why would he tell his brother that Avery had nothing to do with it and then push the car right up the Avery road the morning they're leaving for Crivets and there's papermen coming and I don't know.
I don't know. That's a crazy story. Doc?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian's, I think that was, he recollected, I think, on the 4th of November. So that was a very early statement that Bobby allegedly said to his brother Brian. But when Bobby was actually re-questioned again by Deidre, he denied it. He goes, oh, I don't know what Brian's on about. So he denied everything. And Jinx makes a very good point, right? I mean, why is he telling his brother that he saw Teresa leave and then was potentially involved in bringing back the RAV4, right? But it depends on the observation of Sowinski. Sowinski saw Bobby with the other gentleman on the 5th. Then potentially Bobby said that to his brother one day before being sprung by Sowinski.
Another thing that she, you know, Zellner really addressed this again, and I've said it numerous times. I keep saying it. The amount of things that the state has withheld for forever. We keep finding things. What else is there? That's my question. What else don't we know?
Correct. And really, when you think about it, there's two people that can get the story straight, to straighten it up. Bobby Dassey and the gentleman that was with him, allegedly with him. If what Sowinski saw was indeed Bobby Dassey and the other gentleman with a beard, only those two guys can resolve this conundrum, so to speak. But do you think Bobby Dassey's going to admit pushing the RAV onto the salvage yard?
No.
Of course not.
No, I mean, there's been things that have happened, you know, right, wrong, or indifference. You know, he won't talk to Zellner, which, you know, I guess I can see some point in it, but at the same time, there's this aspect of his brother being in prison. You know, it just creates a god awful environment around that. I mean, just terrible. You know, we've said it here again many times. Doc has, I have. You know, in these, us talking about these things, it doesn't mean that we're accusing anyone. It's just our observations. Don't take it that we believe this or believe that. We have to go what we see. From what I can tell from Sowinski, I mean, he seems to be a straight shooter. He doesn't want the money. He's not looking for fame. He just wanted to tell what he saw. So remember, you know, remember, people, just be respectful as you can be. We understand this is a very emotional thing. It's very personal. You know, Brendan being involved as a child, it tears at people. It makes them mad, and we get that. Just be respectful as you can. That's all I'll say about that. More questions, guys? Well, thank you. Is there more questions out there? Anybody see anything that we need to cover before we put this one to bed for now? Anybody? Looks like we've had a lot of good conversation in the chat. A lot of good conversation here. I'd like to thank O-Dog posted the document in our office and Discord. If anybody that's out there that wants to come and continue to talk about, you know, this and other parts of the case, please join.
Also mention, you know, through this whole conversation on here, we have Google Bots on there, deleting anything with links So if you all want any information, you can go to the description part of this video to get links.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and I'm not sure if Zoe was able to include the link to this document in this, but I think I can edit it and add a link to the actual document. That way, it's easy for anyone that comes along and is watches the video. They can grab the document. So, anything else before I go that I may have missed? Okay. All right. We appreciate everybody coming and going along with us. And until next time, this has been a Foul Play production. All good.